Hello everyone, I am Sakshi Shetty, WI representative at IEEE SIESGST, and I'm thrilled to be your host at this incredible panel discussion under the CS track. We have arrived at the final day of Epsilon 2020, which has been one ride for us as organizers, and we hope that you as participants felt the same. We are really grateful for the astounding response that we have received from you. Just a reminder to the participants that you can submit your projects by 5 p.m. today. The clock is ticking, so hurry up, guys. Moving on, the amazing panelists joining us today share a thing in common. I think you have guessed it right from the title. Yes, it's cloud computing. We will be covering incredible topics like big data DevOps, cloud service models, and a few more other interesting topics. So, without any further ado, I'll introduce you to all our panelists for the day. Our first panelist, Mr. Jatin Gupta, is a data scientist and ML practitioner at IBM and also has hands-on experience with building end-to-end solutions on cloud platforms such as Azure, GCP, and AWS. Our second panelist, Mr. Nitin Krishna. Nitin is handling the cloud security and engineering team in Lewis. He is a certified cloud security professional out of the 189 professionals in India. Our third panelist of the day is Mr. Rushabh Vasa. Rushabh sir is the co-founder of Agraha Technologies and Avaz.com. Agraha Technologies is a leading voice agency in India and preferred partner with Amazon Alexa and Google Assistant. Moving on to our next panelist, we have Mr. Vikash Karuna. Vikas is an accomplished digital transformation and multi-cloud specialist, professional applying cloud, DevSecOps, analytics, best practices, and learn agile principles globally. This is the panelist for our day. Moving on to Mr. Sanket Ghorpade. Sanket sir works at Rapid Circle as a full stack developer building Azure cloud solutions. He has been developing SaaS products in Azure that complement and extend capabilities in Microsoft 365 and SharePoint. Mr. Sanket Ghorpade will moderate our session for the day. I'd like to hand it over to Mr. Sanket, sir.
Thank you,
Hello, sir.
Sakshi.
Please
Thank you.
take it over from here.
Yeah, thank you, Sakshi. Thank you for such a nice introduction. And as you guys are also already excited, I'm also excited to meet everyone here and to learn from the session that we are going to have. So yeah. Now, before we start on this particular discussion about different cloud concepts, I want that each one of us introduce themselves and like how has been their journey and what has motivated them to be where they are right now. So I like maybe Rushabh, you can start first.
Yeah, Sanket, sure. Thanks. Thank you, everyone. And yeah, just to introduce on myself, I run a company called Agria Technologies. I'm co-founder of it. We are into voice, audio, and cloud space. So when I say voice, we build voice bots and voice based applications. We work on Amazon Alexa, Google Assistant, and so on. We have a product called Conclusive for the same. Also, we run podcast platform called Avaz.com, which is into audio space, and we have a lot of audio tech behind it. And we are also into cloud consultancy. So apart from that, I'm also Google developer expert for cloud technologies. So that's like evangelizing Google cloud technology. So yeah, that's about me.
That's really nice to know. I also saw that on the Avas.com that it has a lot of downloads already, and the app is still I think less than even 8 MB right now. And it has been with like such a small size, it is so powerful. So, how was your experience building it?
Yes. So since as I said, Avaz is a podcast platform in Indian languages. Obviously, our target was the mass audience of India. Like and specifically like our languages that we include is Hindi, Marathi, Urdu, and English as well. So we knew that most of the people the mass they use smartphone which are less than 10,000 rupees, and those phones doesn't have so much of storage or the RAM. Maybe you've seen a lot of people struggling with the phone storage specifically, and they don't want large applications. So that thought was always in the mind that, like, because the most mass people will be using our application, we shouldn't. So we had a aim that we shouldn't go beyond 10 MB of our app. Like, so when we started, it was actually 5 MB, but then later on we added some features and things on top of it, so it became 8 MB. And yeah, I mean, we worked a lot on the Android side, where we can compress most of the data. Also, most of the data was coming from server side. That's where the cloud comes into the picture. So everything is related from the cloud. So there is not much that needs to be stored on the local phone memory for any user. So that also helped a lot. And at the same time, we also worked on optimizing the data, because the next thing after storage comes is data. Like, people are very conscious about using their data. Like, it shouldn't be more than, like, like, if they spend like 1 GB a day, like if they get 1 GB a day, they are in a geo plan, 1 or 2 GB, and they always like use data, like, like we spend money. They always save. They will switch off their data if that is not required. I've seen a lot of people who turn off their data from the phone when it's not required, specifically the mass audience. So that all thing we had kept in mind. So we had offline mode from the day one, and then how that data, when we download something, how it is compressed. We also use CD in the backend, so the speed doesn't get hampered. A lot of things, yeah. So I'm say, yeah, it's more of a power of cloud in the backend that fulfills this entire thing, and specifically in country like India.
Yeah, that's really nice. that's really And really excited to hear more about it as we go on with the session. So moving on to Nitin, do you want to introduce
Hey,
yourself?
yeah, thanks for the very good intro. Thank you so much for that. And good afternoon, everyone. So my name is Nitin, and I have more than 15 years experience in IT. Worked with various, MNCs. Uh, Predominantly worked on offensive security aspects and security aspects. And it was, 2 to 3 years back, I moved on to cloud. And since Sanket was asking what motivated me, it was because of the technology itself, right? And Rushabh has actually given an insight, like his application is working like that purely because it is hosted on cloud. So I have actually seen the problems every organization face when the data is on-prem, and the advantages they get when the data is moved onto cloud. And then again, there was always a problem when the data itself is it really secure, the data what we have it on cloud. This was the biggest question everyone has in their minds now, right? And people think, okay, I have moved my data onto AWS. Now it's AWS responsibility to actually maintain the data and secure the data. And that's where everything is getting out of the box, right? And it's not actually correct. AWS is not going to manage anything. It is you who have to actually take care of your data. How you take care of that, you have to actually implement a lot of security practices, governance rules, regulations. And what you do on prem, you have to exactly do most of the things on cloud also. And that is the reason, why I choose for a company like Lowe's, because we are one of the Fortune 40 company. And we thought, we actually started in Azure, then we migrated into AWS, and over the last couple of years we are exploring more options of GCP. And we know Google as the biggest provider of security aspects, more than AWS or more than Azure. We trust Google in terms of security. So that is the reason we are currently moving ahead with GCP, but not every applications are now not ready for GCP. But still, we are in the process of migrating all the applications which is hosted on other platforms into GCP. So this is a glimpse, and we will actually talk more about of this. What happened, how we are actually modeling, what are the different security aspects of data security around it. We will discuss that over the course of time. I don't want to take more time in the introduction part itself, but yeah, very excited to be part of the discussion.
That's really nice. That's right. Before we move on to the next one, I just have one question for you, which
Yeah.
is my personal thing, which I'm very excited about to hear. As you have been into cloud for a very long time now, right? You have already spent a lot of years, and you might have seen it growing throughout the past few years and how it has transitioned. So, I'm very sure, like, is that the reason that the change in the technology that has kept you always motivated to learn more about the latest technology that's coming in?
Yeah, definitely, man. So if you see, I would say I have done predominant of my learning during the COVID time. The last 1 year has been so, it was actually boring sometimes, right? Because you are sitting at home, you are working from home, it doesn't keep you motivated, because when you are in a meeting room, you talk to people, you talk a lot. But work from home actually demotivated a little bit. So to motivate myself and to keep on track, that's the reason why I did a lot of certifications, and learned a lot of good things about cloud. So understood the in-depth concepts of security aspects, then AWS, Azure, GCP. So it was all required for any organization, right? I cannot say I'll only use GCP. That's not going to be a sustainable model for me. So maybe some application would need some of the practices what AWS uses, or some of the practices which Azure uses. Imagine a company is using more of a Microsoft stack, a tech stack. Then I cannot directly move on to GCP. They have to use the Azure platform. It will be good for them to use it. So those are the things which which will come eventually to that organization levels. So based on the needs, based on the requirement, an organization has to choose. And if I say, okay, I don't only GCP, then there are organizations which will say, okay, GCP is actually good and we'll go with that. But for a senior positions, I would say it is always required to have a knowledge of all the cloud platforms, and at least you should know what other people are actually talking. And otherwise, you will be like completely out of the topic, right? You will not understand what they're talking. So that has actually kept me motivated. And as you mentioned, Sanket, I've seen the cloud actually coming from nowhere to actually what we have now. Now, every application, if you see, the first thing what we discuss is whether we can host it on cloud. That is the first discussion what we normally have. Previously,
Yeah.
I'm happy with on-prem. Can we get a virtual machine? That is a discussion what we used to have before. But
Yeah.
now, if you see, I would initially the first discussion I would have is, okay, can I have this application on cloud? And what are the practices what we're going to do that? What are the DevOps? And the one other thing which we have not there in the topic, but the other thing is that DevSecOps. How we
Yeah.
implement the security operations on DevOps, right? That is another big
Cool.
topic which is coming on the go now. So all lot of topics to discuss. So I think I
Yeah.
answered your question, Sanket.
Yeah, yeah, really, really. I'm really excited and looking forward to hear more about this in detail as well.
Yeah,
So
sure.
now moving on to next one. Thanks, Nitin. Moving on to next, Jatin. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi Sanket, hi everyone, good afternoon. First of all, I just want to say a big thank you to all the people who have tuned in. Most of my college days on Sundays were spent sleeping till 2 p.m., so it's amazing that you guys have logged in. I don't know how to feel about that. Uh, but yeah, just a quick introduction about myself. I'm currently working as a data scientist at IBM. And I fully agree with what Nitin said that we need to talk about DevSecOps as well. Absolutely. And also the very fact that in like COVID-19 was a blessing in disguise for me, because even I did most of my certifications during the Corona time. And I'm a GCP certified professional cloud architect and an AWS certified machine learning engineer. But primarily my hands-on experience is has to do with GCP. No particular reason for that. It's just that we were building a solution for one of our clients, and the client wanted their end-to-end stack to be on GCP. So we chose GCP. But I just wanted to point out one thing again, a continuation to what Nitin said, that a person should have at least the very basic knowledge of all the three cloud platforms. I think the most amazing thing about learning about any of the cloud platforms is that when once you have the fundamentals clear in one of the cloud platforms, you can easily replicate that to the other cloud platforms as well. Of course, the stack varies a bit, but for example, if I have to learn about, say, S3 bucket of an AWS, now I know that it is the same bucket there in GCP as well. It's just that nomenclature is different. There it is called cloud storage, or for example, in Azure, it's called blob storage. but essentially the concepts are the same. So if you master one of the cloud platforms, I would say that you are more or less ready to master the other cloud platforms as well. So that is the most beautiful thing about learning about cloud. Apart from that, I look forward to discussing important topics with all of you, and more importantly, I look forward to having fun. Over to you, Sanket.
That's really nice and very well point that you mentioned that we need to have a core strong about any one particular cloud technology that will help to move in a different cloud domain as well. So, uh, very important point. Thanks, Jatin, and really excited to hear your inputs on how you're building on the data engineering at IBM. So, moving on to Vikas. So, Vikas, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Sanket. Yeah, so thanks for being here and everyone uh, with the great panel today. And it's a pleasure to be associated with you guys and discussing this great and opportunity and good things. And yeah, so I bring 2 decade plus industry experience, almost 14 plus in technical leadership, which includes the cloud technologies. Definitely the leading 3 public service that we have, especially around GCP, uh, then AWS, Azure. So my role is predominantly into the cloud advisory and consultancy. So making sure we have the hybrid and multi-cloud strategy in place, working with many MNCs and the customers to navigate them through in their cloud journey basically, and moving their data center workloads, applications into the cloud basically. And as other panelists was talking about, the multi-cloud is the way forward. It's not just the hybrid or the data center point of view, but again it's going to be the multi-cloud. That is where having I do agree as well, like okay, having understanding and skill in one uh, at the you know detail level, at the depth, is predominantly very important. But you should know the crux about the other service providers as well, right? So yeah, I get involved in design, architecture of various solutions, be it using the containerized platform, the serverless, or maybe having the the database or the big data solutions or the workload into the service providers. And also making sure the business critical products are engineered in lean agile way using the cloud and DevOps technologies altogether. Looking forward to have a great discussion. And yeah, this is very
That
highly.
that's really nice. Really good to hear. I'm like what I have heard about your experience in cloud. It has been a quite few years already. Like you mentioned, it has already been 2 decades, and I'm definitely sure that you have a lot of stories to share and how fun it has been throughout this journey. And maybe at the by the end of the session, like when if we have some time, I would really like to hear some of the fun stories or fun
Yes,
incidents that happened during your this 2 decade period. Great.
absolutely.
Thanks a lot, Vikash. And thanks everyone for sharing what they have been doing. Just before we move on to the next part, I will just quickly give a brief introduction about me, like what I have been doing. So my name is Sanket, and I have been working with Rapid Circle for past few years already right now. And Rapid Circle is a cloud-based company. We work mostly on Microsoft Technology Cloud, and I work mostly on solutions on cloud Azure Cloud. I haven't explored much on Google Cloud, but I really excited to hear about from these folks that are present here. And AWS I've explored a little bit, so really excited and looking forward to hear from everyone. My main focus has been on building SaaS solution, building a solution to provide some communication interface to some of the big clients there, and providing like right now I'm working on with some clients where we are moving some of the most confidential data from one environment to another, and making sure while moving that there's a proper secure infrastructure in place while we move it, and there's a proper governance model in place, so that there's nothing goes, if something goes wrong, there's a proper auditing in place there. So yeah, I've been involved there, and trying to build some infrastructure around that end. So I'll be more than happy to share that as well as we go ahead. And with that, I think we are end of the first very initial part of the discussion, that what we all have been doing. And now, moving on to the next part, like let's have some discussion on some of the questions that has been coming from the audience already from the previous, and some I think some of there are some questions which I am also very excited to hear about. So I think I'll start with first Rishabh. So, Rishabh, you have played around, like you already have a product, you already have a service, and you have been working on voice-related service, right? And I'm sure that with this kind of service and this kind of product, you might have been interacting with a lot of big data, right? So, I have a question to you, like how big data has emerged in the past few years, and what do you think that what kind of opportunities does it provide, and how do you see it growing throughout the next few years now?
Yes, yes, Sanket. So yeah, big data is a buzzword in today's tech industry. Everyone is talking about big data, data analytics, and so on and so forth. And but see, I mean, honestly, data has been there since years, right? Like since the
True.
internet started, and like since 2000, we had data. Companies have been connecting tons of data, and but now what has changed is now that big data, or what we call it the data analytics, has democratized. So now it's like it has come to everyone, like even a small startup or individual or a large company like Google and Facebook. They all have a same capability or powers to use the data and get the results, the desired results out of those data. Now, in simple words, like there is a tons of data, and you run some analytics on top of it, and you get the results. Now that was whole big data concept was. Uh, but now what has changed is, like, because of the cloud that has come, like, or the growth of the cloud technology in last couple of years. What this cloud computing does, they provide the fundamental support to run all these big data related operations. For example, like like there, so this cloud, for example, you don't have to have on-prem infrastructure when it's cloud. So because of that, you can get resources like computing, storage, networking, or the analytics software. All these applications have become accessible for everyone, and that has driven this entire growth for this big data in the last few years, which was not there earlier. I mean, that was there, but it was limited to all the big companies like Google, Facebook. They all had their own analytics and stuff like that. But since the growth of the cloud has led to all this sort of data related applications or the operations, I would say. And in specifically, and now it has moved much further in that space. Like when in like 4 years, 5 years back, it was still like a compute engine, and you have some BigQuery storage, and you run your operations. Now this cloud platform has moved ahead and provided applications on top of it, where you have to do a minimum efforts to kind of run your data
Right.
analytics, or crunch your data and extract some things out of it, like and Google also, like and now it has moved further to the AI part of it, like, so from earlier, like it was only the pure analytics. Now from analytics you drive some assumptions or predictions, and that has led to the AI growth, I would say. So I mean, in a short, I mean, this entire growth has of data or big data is because of the cloud, and that is because of the cheaper cost and the the greater infrastructure which is like now available for everyone.
Right. Right. And just like one more thing over here, that like you have been right now you have a lot of data that we have been playing around, like, but help me understand this part. When do we classify data as a big data? Like, consider that I am at my home, and I have a sensor, and that sensor detects maybe some temperature, and after every, let's say, 5 seconds, it sends out that data, it stores that data. So when do I say that this data that it is collecting, it is a big data, or when do I classify it as a big data, or when do I say it is just a data?
Yeah, see, I mean, honestly, the basic definition of big data is like when it's like petabytes or so on. That's what they call it as like big data. But I mean, as you said, the example that you gave, like for example, so it all depends on the application of data that you're going to do, or what you're going to do with data. For example, in your case, you have like you have a sensor which sends the data of the temperature every 5 seconds. What is the application of that? Like, what are you going to do with that data? For example, are you going to kind of set an alarm? Like, let's say if the temperature goes above 35, your AC should turn on and it should
Right.
set to 20, 25 automatically. That
Mhm.
sort of applications are there. Then it's like even like small data. Small means like few maybe maybe a few GBs of data also would be sufficient to kind of type the pattern that okay, if the temperature goes above this particular level, this should happen. If temperature goes below this particular level, this should happen. That sort of applications. So
Yeah.
I mean, like for example, in ours we collect a lot of data. Like everything that you do on our app, we collect the data. Like so, we know that what people are listening to, what sort of content you are listening, when you are listening to what sort of content. We have seen a pattern. Like people listen to Bhagavad Gita also, and at the same time they listen to horror stories as well. I know, and there is a mix where like people listen to Hindi content. Sometimes the same users listen to Marathi content, and then the same user also listens to English content. So we can't define that. Okay, this is a Hindi audience. This is so that sort of data collection, and then the application. So when I know that okay, Sanket is a devotional guy. He listens to Bhagavad Gita, and but he also listens to a lot of these Bollywood gossips as well. So I know what kind of content to be recommended to you at what time. So that time I don't need like tons or like petabytes of data
Yeah.
to derive what Sanket's preferences are. So yeah, I
Right.
mean that's what I feel like because only size will not define, but so the
Yes.
application is more important.
That's really good. Nice input actually there. That size doesn't just define the classification of data as a big data, but the application, how and where it was going to be used, that defines it. Great. So now continuing to the same part, maybe Rishabh, you can answer it, or if Jatin, you want to pick it up, you can also answer this one. Like what we have been looking into that. Uh, Big data, we whenever see we hear about big data, we also always think about cloud, right? So is just the cloud only the ideal platform for big data, or is there something else alternate that is already coming up or has been there, which should be used or which should also be considered? Personally, I do not know. I whenever it comes around big data, I only think of cloud. But what is your take on this?
Uh, So I personally believe that yeah, cloud. I mean, as I earlier mentioned that this entire big data thing has come into this limelight because of cloud. And it's not that you can't set up your own on-prem big data warehouse and run some queries and run some operation, but the cost is huge. Cost compared, like for example, in cloud, the best part about the cloud billing is that you only pay for what you use. Even if you
Right.
have like the VM which is like of some 16 core and you have some 32 GB of RAMs and what kind of and kind of like whatever the configuration that you're running, you will only pay for the amount of time that you're using that particular instance or the service.
Right.
Now in that case, like it is much more easier for anyone to kind of start something small and then grow, and that scalability is also available with cloud. Now let's say if you have to set up the same big data center in on-prem, we need to set up that kind of hardware. You need that kind of bandwidth, you need that kind of applications. So initial cost would be like like in billions probably.
True.
And that's why I said like alternative is on, like probably a Salesforce can think of something like that where he can set up his own big data centers and do his own operations because they have billions of dollars to kind of spend and initially invest. But for, and that also doesn't make sense according to me, is because like see, the technology is evolving. Right, today you are running on something, tomorrow something else will come. You need to keep it up, like that the entire concept of having it on cloud and not on premise, just like you have a lot of
Yeah.
flexibility, agility, you have scalability, and that is not possible with on-prem. So yeah, I mean, I would really say like best option is to go with cloud, and I think
That's
that
right.
yeah, only option as of now
Yeah.
I see.
True, true. Completely agree. Completely agree. Because even if I was running a startup and I won't have a lot of data, I will definitely not have that much amount of money to get my buy my own servers and process this huge amount of computation at my end. So definitely, that completely agree. Cloud is the go-to solution to if you want to play around with big data. So thanks Rushabh for answering that. I and like we there's since we all have been playing around, we have been listening around a lot of big data around already in news, already in companies, and based on this lot of data that is coming from different areas. We also hear about some of the advantages and disadvantages, right? And there are some problems and some challenges to handle or tackle this big data. And I think Jatin, you have been playing around with some of this big data already and have been building some solutions around it, right? So what do you think that what are the most like complex challenges or that you have seen or have heard about when dealing with big data around the cloud technology?
Thank you, Sanket, for asking me that. I think a few advantages Rishabh already has stated. For example, when he stated that it's it's a pay as you go model, so your capital expenditure or your upfront costs are zero. It's entirely your operational expenditure or your OPEX in a way. So whatever you consume, the number of we pay only for that. And since we are dealing with petabytes and even greater data than that in some of data, we don't really have to set up our own servers.
I think we lost Jatin for a second there now. Um but
Yeah. So Sanket,
Vikas, do you want to continue? Yeah.
yeah. So
Was with respect to the scalability. I think I lost everyone.
Yeah, yeah.
Jatin, we can hear you
Mm.
now. So yeah,
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yes,
yeah.
yes.
Okay, sorry. I think something's wrong with my internet connection. Okay, so I was just saying. So one, of course, one very distinct advantage is, of course, with respect to the financial benefits. The second would be with respect to the scalability, as again as Rishma mentioned, that say for example we see a very sudden spike in the traffic coming to say one of our servers, then we can easily have load balancing in our cloud computing systems that can easily upgrade or increase the number of servers or the number of VMs that we have. Thirdly, according to me, the biggest advantage, if you ask me, with respect to the big data on cloud, is something which is a bit more implicit or which cannot be seen by the naked eye, is that it drives innovation. um, what really happens with a lot of on-premises big data solutions is that a lot of the team members are involved just in managing servers or data warehouses. So essentially, you want your team to focus more on the analytics part. You want your team to focus more on the solutions part and not on the mundane or the backend stuff like managing servers or data warehouses. So
Right.
what really happens when your team focuses on the analytics part is that they actually get better insights into the data of your client and they actually drive better solutions. So that, according to me, is the biggest benefit of big data on the cloud. And also, I think the cost of analytics is very low in what do you say in cloud computing. For example, if I use BigQuery, now BigQuery, if you look at the pricing of the financial model of BigQuery charges you for the number of queries that you make. And
Hmm.
also, they provide you a certain set of queries which are absolutely free for, I think, a certain month or a certain year.
Hmm. So
Not just for,
I'm understanding that when you talk about BigQuery, it is just for the analytics purpose, right? That you have already have the data and you have the data right now stored, and you want to perform some analytics, and there you are executing this query. Is that correct? Just for my
correct,
understanding.
correct, correct. So
Okay.
that is one thing, and also the disaster recovery. I think that is something which a lot of architecture people, once they get into designing end-to-end solutions, they really start to think about disaster recovery. So the thing with on-premise solutions is that if for XYZ reasons there is a crash of your system, then you again have to provision a certain number of, say, servers or data warehouses, which is not only time consuming, but it is also very complex and very expensive. But when you think of the same thing on the cloud, then disaster recovery systems are usually inbuilt, because all the big cloud providers, they know that, the clients or the users which are coming to them, they want to have inbuilt disaster recovery systems. So you already have those additional servers and VMs and infrastructure already in place, just in case for XYZ reasons your system crashes.
Yeah,
So that is another advantage of, I think, cloud computing.
that's really nice. And very exciting to hear like how people and how companies have been handling this and tackling these challenges, and how with the cloud been growing from the past few years, they have a lot of services which people had to implement earlier. Now they have taken it as a service and provided as a service as an offering there right now. So that's very interesting to see how it's been growing. And now we have the data, we have it on the cloud. Now as soon as it comes on cloud, first thing that comes in our mind is about the security. Like we have the data, we have personal information, we have a lot of different data already in cloud. And we keep hearing about some data leaks that is happening, and people making sure, companies working day and night to make sure the data is secure. So Nathan, based on your experience, you have been handling most of the security part. So want to hear about your opinion, how security is being handled when it comes to big data.
So very good question, Saket. So mainly if you look at for organizations, right? So like you might have heard about the recent Zomato data leak, right? And also the Twitter. So every company are on cloud, but do they really secure the data? The simple answer is no. They are weak. There are a lot of weak streams in managing the data security aspects. So every organization follow different strategies around securing the data. But one of the best thing, which because of the interest of audience, what I would feel is that bring up a very strong encryption platforms, right? So the more you encrypt the data, even if some attackers are actually getting the data, they would not be able to actually see what the data is. So you must have heard about ransomware attacks. The people get the data from and they ask for a ransom. And if the data is encrypted, they cannot actually do anything with the data. So the first and foremost thing for any of us, whoever is moving their data onto cloud, is to actually look at, because the big data, we are talking about huge data. We are talking about terabytes or petabytes of data. And one good point made by Jatin is that he started talking about BigQuery, right? And BigQuery can handle petabytes of data. And we can actually talk more also, but we are not talking more because we don't have that much of data available for some organizations right now. But if you have data, you can go for exabytes, you can go for that, it can go to any limits. And when we talk about that, if I lose the data, right, imagine Rushabh wants to take control of my data and he's taking the data of my organization. He can do anything with that. It's the biggest asset an organization carry. So it is very important for the organizations to first protect the data, secure the data, then play around the data. The first is to, if you build a house, what is the first thing you build? You build a strong wall outside it, right? So that
Yeah,
any, trespassers will not come inside. The same practices is something which we also now follow. As soon as you move your data onto BigQuery or onto your GCP or AWS or any other platforms. So the first thing, we have to actually bring up. So there are a lot of encryption platforms. We go for asynchronous, synchronous. So many, sometimes what happens is, if you build, it depends on each, because GCP itself brings up a lot of value add on the encryption itself. And there are a lot of keys, the secure walls, which actually brings up by GCP. So you can actually save your keys, your passwords, your identities. Everything can be saved on the walls itself instead of actually saving it on. Sometimes we hard code some of the IDs, right? So that is some of the things which you have to make sure which is actually kept inside a vault. So how do we manage it? So those are the things which will come as a first check. The first check what we normally do is to make sure you have an encryption layer in on the data what you're actually building. The next one, the biggest and the foremost, you would have heard about, a lot of people talking about firewalls, right? It's the biggest thing. So The firewall is nothing but you're keeping a door for your house. So
Mhm.
the stronger the doors are, the harder for the hackers to actually come inside. So you create a firewall that has to be very effective in terms of filtering the traffic for both entering and leaving the servers. So basically, what happens? Imagine as a user, as a employee of the organization, I might be able to access some of the vulnerable websites from the cloud if I'm keeping some of the IDs open. So what happens? It is my mistake that I went to that site and the hackers found what kind of technologies I'm using, what kind of services which I'm using on my cloud. That is my mistake. So on a firewall, I have to actually take care of both something which enters into the system and something which leaves the servers also. So you have to make sure both the things are being taken care very strongly.
Right.
So strong filtering concepts, right? If you work for a very reputed organization, you can always see that you will have a lot of filtering. The some websites won't be accessible. That has a reason for it. It is not that the company doesn't want you to access that. It is mainly because if you actually give the information, because at any point of time, 24/7, 365 days, hackers are looking at your data.
Right.
And they are more experienced and talented than us, I would say, because their only job is to attack.
Right.
We have to also work on attacking, we have to work on defending also, but
Right.
they are a team of people who focus only on attack. So you can
Mm.
understand, right? There are, you would have seen the viruses which comes in very often, that it takes at least a month for us to actually build an antivirus. We might isolate that attack, but it takes a lot of time for us to, and quite a few times what I have noticed is that, imagine Zomato is declaring that, okay, I have been attacked. The news actually comes after a month of an
Yeah.
attack happens,
True.
after a month or 2 months after, because I need to make sure my customer data is safe, right? Otherwise,
Right.
I can actually charge, I can give a petition against the organization to say that, okay, see, I lost this data, especially when you talk about financial data. So like, the credit card information, your net banking information, and things like that are the things which is very very sensitive informations, right? And those informations are not to be hacked. So how do we save it? So those are the things which comes to the building a strong firewall. The last and the foremost thing which I have mostly seen is that, do not ever give root access. You have to make sure that you should have a proper vault mechanism to control the root access for the BI tools what we are using. It can be your BigQuery, it can be your Composer in terms of GCP. It can be a Composer, it can be a Data Fusion, or any of that. We shouldn't ever give the root access, like the analytics platform. Or even imagine there is a third party provider, like now Databricks is actually been taken over by GCP itself, but previously Databricks was a separate entity. And if you want to have a connection between your data composer or a BQ with Databricks, you have to enable a key, API key, to get the data from. And when you do that, is that really secure? Are we giving any root access to Databricks to read the data? If it is there, make sure that we are not giving for any third party applications. So because we might need, right, when you actually work upon any cloud platforms, there are a lot of good providers, third party providers, who can actually leverage the same service, maybe at a cheaper rate, and maybe at a very very UI friendly and very elegantly looking dashboards. So we normally look for that. One example was actually Looker, that also was taken over by Google recently. And Looker is a wonderful platform. So previously, before the Google acquisition of Looker, we have to actually give the data, the control of data, to Looker. But we never looked at the root access, whether Looker is able to read the root access or things like that, because we were new to the cloud and we never had the access to actually check. So now, you know, we have to actually see these three concepts in whenever you talk about securing your data: encryption,
Hmm.
firewall, and root access. So the key things which you have to remember.
Right.
And
Right.
by this, I'm not saying, Sanket, that we can completely avoid an attack. When we
Yes.
are securing this much, the attacker also would have learned how to break these rules also. So this will only reduce the opportunities. Say maybe we can reduce 40 to 60 percentage of
Yeah,
attacks, but the 40% again still be there. So it is always a risk, but
true,
we
true,
have
true.
to learn how to
Completely.
avoid the risk.
Completely agree, completely agree. We can put as many locks as possible, but we cannot put a lock which will always be secure lock or most secure lock. So completely agree with you. I think Jatin, you have something to say. Please go
No,
ahead.
I just wanted to ask Nitin actually. I mean, I'm curious myself. So I think the whole concepts of security can get a bit complex for students, right?
Yeah.
So, like, if you were to recommend college students, because I think the primary audience here is college students. So, how should college students learn the basics of security on the internet or on the cloud? How should they go about it?
So, see, when you talk about cloud storage encryption, it is mainly about encrypting the keys, right? So, if you look at, there are a lot of other encryption platforms, encryption ways of doing encryption. But here we are not talking about any kind of, uh, you know, uh, the biplop or things like that. Here, what we mainly talk about are the how we secure your cloud by encrypting your data, your, the keys and the walls. So basically, imagine Jatin, the example would be like, imagine I'm building an application on cloud. I'm creating an app. So I have some sensitive information, like I'm saving my, uh, we are saving some information of credit card information, or maybe some transaction information. So those information, how do we mask it? I normally, what we do, we save the data on directly onto the DB. But instead of that, when we actually transform the data, before we actually save it on the DB, even the DB data has to be secure enough. So that is what the encryption we are talking about here. Not like, okay, after you save in DB, you mask it. No, before it reaches, because like the attacks happens are mostly on the man in the middle attack. So imagine when I'm typing something on the application which is hosted on cloud, by the time it reaches DB, I can actually interrupt the traffic and get the data from. So how do we
Right.
avoid it? So that is something which basically does on a encrypting at the cloud level itself, at the UI layer itself. It doesn't go to the DB and do the encryption there. So in between
Right.
that, we have to take care of the encryption, and the encrypted data gets saved onto DB, because you have a decryption also. As soon as you do an encryption, when the user wants to read the data, we have a decryption algorithm also written for the same level. And this, imagine Jatin is building an encryption. Jatin only knows about the decryption algorithm for that, unless you share the information with someone else, right? So that is where it is very important for college students also to understand that the encryption is, it's a very huge concept. When you talk about cryptography, it is huge. It itself is a one subject in cyber security, and it takes about 8 to 10 weeks of classes. And it's a wonderful topic to discuss. But for a cloud security per se, I don't think we will be talking all the aspects of cryptography. But here the main target, as I mentioned, would be is that when you enter some information on a web application or a web, your cloud based application, it can be a mobile application or it can be a web application. How do you make sure that information what you enter there is is encrypted and it is then saved onto the DB? Because you have to avoid the man in the middle attack, and that is what you have to mainly focus. And I'm sure that Rushabh would agree for that, because you would have faced some of the key concept about man in the middle attack, because that is where people are actually looking at with the what we are talking here, right? So imagine we talk in a different base, and the same is actually available on YouTube. So if someone wants to break this, they can actually create a simple script and run it on the browser what we are actually having, all five of us, and the connection would be lost to the YouTube. So simple as that. So how do we enable that kind of encryption?
Yeah.
So, Nitin, I think you brought a good point actually. So, what I see, like for a college student or whoever is willing to get into the cloud computing world, basically. So there are I mean, encryption, decryption, and cryptography. These are definitely the kind of must-have from the data security point of view. Be it data at rest, whether it's in database or big data solution, or data in transit, right? So that is where, from the encryption point of view, data at rest and data in transit, it's very essential. Like, how do you secure the the various network layer altogether, right? Do you have the right kind of firewalls in place? Do you have your application secured by using right kind of WAF protocol, or some sort of solution around that? So you had I mean, obviously that level of encryption decryption a lot of time is handled by the SSL or HTTPS layer altogether, right? So that's fantastic. I mean, one should be aware of that as well when it comes to the data at rest and data in transit, basically. And obviously, when you talk about the encryption, not it's not just encrypting the data, but again, keeping the encryption keys safe and secured as well, right? So that's where also it boils down that how do you keep your encryption keys secured as well. So that is where we have to be very very prudent and cautious about it as well. So this is more to do with data while in transit at the application layer or within the perimeter, basically. But there are something which needs to be secured from the perimeter side as well, right? Let's say at the CloudFront distribution level itself, when you do the content delivery, do you have the right kind of authentication authorization in place? How do you secure your network layer altogether, right? So that's also very predominantly important. I mean, there are, you need to have the right kind of BPC created, right kind of subnets created. You should have the NACL, network access control list, or all sort of control gateways all there, so that only the right IPs are allowed, right protocols are allowed, so the data are secured from the networking point of view. That is also the area that one need to look into it, right? The third area that I also see like is very important. I think you also mentioned about the looker, right? There are a lot of big data solutions being used by the industry, be it the Hadoop or maybe the MapReduce, the Kafka. There are a lot basically. And as you one of the panel member rightly pointed out, these solutions, because of the cloud agility, you know enterprise can build up their solution and spin up the application to have their big data solution and store the not just the petabyte, again even the exabyte of data altogether, right? So that is where when you use spin up such kind of solutions or application, for example, the map reduce uses the kind of different storage technologies altogether. The data are kind of replicated across multiple storage locations. Then internally data transfer happens. So how secure that transfer is within the the different storage layer altogether, within the the application boundary altogether. That is also very important to look into basically. And so this is one area definitely. And the fourth area that we often miss is the application, right? The application, and that is being used as an data capture tool, or maybe as a kind of reporting platform, let's say. I mean, so securing our application is also very essential, right? And that is where having all sort of HTTPS or SSL layer, right kind of firewalls or WAF protocol being used at the application security level itself is very important basically, right? So that's the
True,
another area to look into. And let's not forget that when we build such kind of custom solutions, we should
mhm,
do this full proofing in terms of
true,
uh, you know doing the security testing, the vulnerability scan, and right kind of when you talk about the vulnerability scan, a lot of open source technology are being used in these applications. How do you ensure that those open source components that you are using within your application, those components are secured altogether, those components doesn't have the vulnerability altogether? That is also the area that needs to be looked into basically. So when you put together the scan or vulnerability, we should ensure that the static SAST and DAST, right? The dynamic security scan as well as the static scan is done thoroughly, and you eradicate all the vulnerability points over there. So it boils down multi-layered approach, not
true,
just having the right authentication authorization, not just having the right encryption and decryption, but also securing your application, making sure your network are foolproof, and that is where there are multiple area that needs to be looked into from the data security point of view.
Completely. Very good point, actually, and a very great discussion about security. And I think that whatever we have been talking about, as even if we talk the complete day, it won't be sufficient to define how important security is and how critical it is while implementing anything. But thanks a lot for providing such a great insight on how security has been implemented currently, or how it should be implemented, or how people should have focused more on it. And I think people will be more happy to hear more about it. And it will be great that maybe later on, if Nathan, Vikash, you will be able to share some of the links or some of the articles, like who are security enthusiasts and want to jump into and start their journey. Like if I graduated from college and I want to start with my to learn more about security, what is the first step that I should put up? So after the session, maybe if you can share that with the organizers of this particular program, it will be really helpful for the students as well, because they will get to know and learn under your guidance as well there. Yeah, great.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. And now moving on to the next very important topic and most buzzing word that people are excited to hear about is of the word DevOps. So yeah, we have been hearing about DevOps from a very long time. We all are working on DevOps, right? And now let me put it in this way on DevOps. So what how do you want to define DevOps? Maybe Rushabh, you can take this ahead. Like, what is DevOps? And if I'm a college student and I want to learn about DevOps, what is the first thing that I should think about? So, what do you think?
Right. See, basically, DevOps, like in a simple word, if I say, like, just for the students to understand, DevOps is nothing but, like, like some set of best practices, I would say, I mean, to manage your application, manage your infrastructure, and manage your, entire, whether it's cloud or whether it's your application, whatever. The DevOps is like, a basics. I mean, we usually call it as the best practices to manage your IT infra or application, as simple as that. But and it comes with a lot of set of rules, and which are already defined, and you need to just follow it, and they need to know how, like, how to do it. Like that's more important. I mean, like for students, like you said, how they learn it. I mean, usually I believe, like, specifically, especially in the cloud or even in technology space, the best ways to learn is to do it. Like, unless and until you try, I mean, in tech space specifically, whether it's programming, whether it's cloud, or anything related to tech, until unless you try, you will not know. So same way, to learn it, you need to. There are a lot of tutorials available online. Like, for example, you can go to, there are quick labs available. You can take those labs and try some basic hands-on on this. Otherwise, as a basic, it's a set of rules that you need to follow. I mean, that's what we define as. And then, of course, you can go in further in detail in the DevOps space, like what exactly it is and how you manage your infrastructure. So application DevOps is a little different than the cloud DevOps. Again, so in
Right.
cloud DevOps, there are a lot of other things which are involved. Like security is one of the core aspect of the DevOps. Like the DevOps guy has to understand the security. Has to have a knowledge of the access control, like whom is he giving access to, what kind of access, what user is having, and so on and so forth. So yeah, it's much more detailed. But in short, this is what DevOps according to me.
That's nice. That's really nice. I have one question over here. Like, when I was in my college and I was just about to graduate, I also started hearing about DevOps. And the first thing that I had this in my mind about DevOps, and correct me if this is the right approach to think of DevOps then. Like, in my college, I was building a web application. After the web application, it was running on my local IS server, right, local machine. And once the web app was complete, I wanted to publish this app on some cloud. And the easiest way, since it was a .NET app, the easiest way was right click and publish, and tie up to some Azure cloud service, and it will publish it there. Then I heard about there's something called a CI/CD, and there's you like as soon as I develop, I commit my code, it will push to maybe GitHub or the DevOps. So the VST server that is present, and as soon as a new code is present, it will build it automatically, and then publish the code automatically. So, and maybe put some validation check. So CI/CD, is this also part of DevOps?
Yes, Sanket. CI/CD is very much part of DevOps. In fact, I mean, now in this kind of world that we're living, everything is so much real time. CI/CD plays a very big and crucial role for any kind of application development. Because and applications it's not like it's like you mentioned when you build a website, there is a difference between static website and dynamic. Like static website you build and you just deploy it. But this
Right.
kind of application that we use right now on cloud, they're continuously upgraded. There is continuous developments are going on, and you can't stop your application and shut down the servers, deploy the code, and then you start again. So user
Yeah.
will not be like, for example, so there is a new update which comes, like for example, whether it's any app, that is Ola, Zomato, or any app. You don't see a downtime when there's some new changes comes or there is a new development happening. So
Yeah.
CI/CD, of course, is a very much part of today's. In fact, I would suggest all the students that you should learn and understand about CI/CD. Even if you are not into the cloud space, you want to become a developer. It's very important to understand the entire CI/CD process. It's called continuous integration and continuous development. That's what CI/CD stands. Deployment, sorry. That's what CI/CD stands for. So you build something, you test it, and you run it, you deploy it, again you test it. So that kind of cycle that keeps running into this entire CI/CD, and that's very much important. I would say yes, and that has become like, and I don't know, it's like a basic of DevOps now. Like if you are into DevOps, you should understand the basic CI/CD operations and how it functions, and what is the procedure, what are the set SOPs or guidelines that are set by the organization, or you should set something of your own, sort of things.
That's really nice. That's really helpful. And I think also to start with students, for the students to already start with DevOps and want to learn about CI/CD, as you mentioned, that people should learn about CI/CD at least, start with it, and maybe learn about different concepts of DevOps as well. I think GitHub can be a good example there. Like I think these college students might be having a lot of projects already hosted on GitHub and using the GitHub CI/CD pipeline, integrating it with a free version of maybe, let's say, Microsoft VSTS, right? The visualstudio.com. Everyone gets a free account. They can build up the same CI/CD pipeline and can learn about integrating as a DevOps, right?
Absolutely, absolutely, yes. So GitHub is like the most popular example. Like everyone, I'm sure, is aware about the GitHub nowadays, and that is like the best example of how this entire CI/CD pipelines are built and managed. Yes, and nowadays again, like GitHub is very much important for all the students to know, because you go to any, even if it's a small IT company or a large organization, specifically if they are into product space, they will definitely be having GitHub as their uh, you know uh, uh, as a basic tool to use. There are other tools as well, but GitHub is more popular and common, and as like said, it's very price effective as well. There are a lot of things come for free, and then you can upgrade and so on and so forth. Yes.
That's really nice. Thanks, Rishabh. Now I have one more important question coming up, and you have already explained the part of it, like how DevOps is there and how it is important. Now, when it comes about, you mentioned important part about how when you talk about it, can be into application development, it can be into cloud development, right? So how do we, maybe this question can be for Vikash, uh, how DevOps is dictating a new approach in cloud development, right? So if you want to develop a cloud-based solution, how DevOps is helping there?
Yeah,
With an
so
example,
Sanket,
maybe?
yeah. So definitely. So before I answer that, so let me give the broader perspective of DevOps basically. So DevOps, many times there is a misconception. It's like just tools, technology, CI/CD, or SRE. People try to collate that and relate with that basically. But industry and the enterprise are looking DevOps from the broader point of view basically. Not just from the tools, technology, or delivery pipeline point of view. Let me put that way. So there is, when you have the customer requirement, business requirement, there is a concept of biz DevOps. Okay, so you make sure you get the right kind of requirement, agile requirement, and only the prioritized, backlog or the features are being developed into the product life cycle basically. So that's where the biz DevOps come into picture. And it's all boils down to the overall one umbrella, that is the DevOps. Second aspects, obviously there are tools, technologies, process around the implementation, development, testing, how you automate all the things in your implementation life cycle, the delivery life cycle, be this automated testing or anything and everything that we talked about, CI/CD, continuous testing, continuous delivery, and all that part of. And there are numerous tools around that. We call it as a tools of salad of tools. Basically, you have to choose based on your taste and appetite that you want to have it, because it's massive amount of tools and technology out there in the DevOps space for different kind of needs. Now, coming to, there is one important part of it as well, the continuous feedback cycle, continuous feedback loop as well, where when you deploy your application, you know you need to get the feel of the application or the product from the when you deploy into the production environment. That is where the various, there are multiple opportunity to get the feedbacks, be it from how the applications are being used, or what is the APM platform performance management look like, how application is performing, is there some sort of crash report, can it be done automatically recovery, all sort of things that also gets into place during the entire life cycle. Security, we have been talking about a lot on the security, right? DevSecOps comes from that angle as well, not just securing your delivery cycle, securing your CI/CD pipeline, and the components, your software, everything, but also how you're securing your production environment, how you are securing the taking care of security from the requirement and design stage itself. So that also is very important. And so that DevSecOps comes from that angle. So all it boils down to that. Now, coming back to the cloud, the second part of your question, which comes how cloud can help in this, achieving this DevOps basically approach altogether.
Right.
See, the fundamental reason behind having the DevOps and cloud is agility, right? Is speed, the optimization, automation, and scale of operation, right? All this
Right.
can be achieved with the combination of these two technologies, basically, right?
Hmm.
So obviously, with the cloud, you have the right kind of platforms
Hmm.
where
Right.
you can spin up your infrastructure, you can augment and scale your workload. At the same time, DevOps gives you the framework, the process, the guidelines which you can implement, right? And at the same time, the tools and technology in place for whatever the region, be it from the infrastructure as a core point of view, or maybe automating your CI/CD, or continuous deployment point of view. So everything you can have your DevOps tools and technology in place to get the metrics, audit logs, get insights, take corrective actions on
Mhm.
top of that as well, right? So there are a lot of use cases around that as well. And cloud gives you the platform where you have these tools, technologies, services ready available, which you can just consume it. Obviously
Right.
there is a pay as you go model. So this agility with the cloud, it brings a lot of uh, help to the customers and the enterprise, basically. So that is where the cloud comes in place. Second aspects definitely comes from having the centralized architecture, using the cloud native deployment, using the containerization or event driven architecture, be it in the form of microservices or all sort of things that we have. The scale and with which you can achieve such kind of implementation with the cloud, that is phenomenal, basically, right? That's where
Hmm.
uh, the things that have been preached by the DevOps, the agility, speed, as are being realized by these cloud platforms, basically by their
Hmm.
services. That is where both are complementing to each other. It's not like cloud, because of DevOps cloud is there, or because of cloud DevOps is there. No, it's complementing each other, basically. And that is
Right.
where having a control and command on both these technologies is very essential.
That's a really nice input, Vikash, and that really helps to understand on how the DevOps is playing a very vital role in implementing the cloud, and how you put up a very good point on highlighting that when it comes to big data or anything around cloud, not just big data, anything around cloud development, building a DevOps pipeline helps to speed up the work, right? Delivering, putting over delivering. A new feature comes up, you build up a pipeline, you add that, and you push it rather than making. And you also make sure that there's less and less mistake, right? And more control on how the delivery, much better output there. So that's really nice input, Vikash. And that helps to answer this part. Moving on to the next part of this question is like I think students will also want to know and also want to learn about like what are okay, now they have understood about different DevOps concept, like how it is there, why it is important. But now if they want to get started or want to play around, like I mentioned, one thing is about GitHub and maybe visualstudio.com, right? They can prepare that DevOps, create a DevOps project there and can start with. I think there are a lot of different DevOps area as well, like different tools available. So what are the different tools or DevOps tools that are present which can help to build a cloud development or to push something on cloud, or maybe create an infrastructure on the cloud using DevOps? So what are the different tools that are present?
Yeah, so there are plenty basically. Let's say, and then let's say if I have to recommend some of the cloud agnostic tools, let's say the Terraform, Ansible, Puppet. There are many. Safe Puppet. There are many basically. So, Terraform, I think is one of the best, and used across the cloud platforms, and it's very easy to learn. It's very. I think it's just simple syntax, simple constructs. Student can just pick up very easily and then get master of it. Even the cloud service provider come up with their own DevOps tools and technologies basically. Those are I think mostly proprietary, not used not but at very scale basically. Let's say for example, the Google, it has its deployment manager concept, right? Similarly, Azure had its arms template concept. Cloud formation is the concept in the into the AWS platform altogether. So they when they you know master the specific clouds and the related technologies, obviously those will be of use to specific to the cloud, right? But again, having the mastery on some sort of Terraform kind of tools for the infrastructure as a code definitely will help actually.
That's
Obviously,
really
yeah.
That's nice.
Mhm.
That's nice. I think Jatin has also worked around something on DevOps in his current organization, and I think also played around different projects as well. So Jatin, what do you think? Like, what other different tools as well? Like what Vikash has already mentioned, other than what are different tools or components that are present which people should learn and understand around DevOps?
So, firstly, Sanket, DevOps used to be a very complicated process earlier. I think I don't have as much experience as Nitin or Vikash, but yeah, sorry, just 1 second. Yeah, so but there are certain like for example, when you talk about Azure, right? So Azure has many DevOps tools which are there which you can use. For example, when you're planning your work, you can use tools such as Jira, where you can plan your entire work. Or for example, when you're doing some unit testing, you can use something such as a JUnit. Or when you want to automate some of those tasks, you can use Selenium. Or for example, when you're moving towards the staging environment, you can use something like Ansible. So for all the stages of your life cycle for DevOps, you can use different tools. For example, the very last stage where you actually deploy your solution and you want to get more insights into your solution, for that you can use services such as Application Insights of Azure. And the greatest part about not just Azure but GCP and AWS as well is that, of course, they try to promote their own in-house services, but at the same time they have full support of third-party services as well. The one that I mentioned, Ansible, for example, Ansible, as far as I know, is not developed by Microsoft, but still Ansible has complete support of Microsoft Azure. And similarly, for all the different services, Selenium, for example, JUnit, for example, all these services are, I don't think have been developed by Azure, by Microsoft, but they are still supported by Azure, and similarly, that is the case with AWS and GCP. So
Right.
it's generally very easy. DevOps used to be very complicated, but now it's just about um, 3 or 4 clicks, and just with 3 or 4 clicks, you can have your entire DevOps up and running. Of course, it requires some knowledge in this sphere, but just strictly speaking, in terms of the implementability and setup, it's not much of work. Uh,
Right. Right. That's really nice. I think you also highlighted a very important point about DevOps is not just for development; it is also used for testing platform as well. So that's a very important point. And I think when we talk always about cloud development, we focus more on the development part, and we forget to talk about testing part, like how critical it is or how important it is to consider the the testing strategies in while developing a cloud platform. So that's a really good input, Jatin. Thanks for that. Now, since we understand certain part, I know that just half an hour is not good enough to do justice with DevOps, but I think panelists have done a very great job in making sure to understand how what is DevOps, and there are a lot of questions already been coming in the chat that I can see from participants who are asking about what are the different certification courses and what can be done, and we are definitely going to answer most of this question at the by end of the session. So please stay tuned to listen to that. Now, moving to the next part, or I think last part, uh, major part of the session is about we we all are from different cloud backgrounds, right? Or I think one or two people already here have worked on all three platform or more than three platforms, right? So I think Nitin, you have very good experience and around different security in different cloud domains as well, right? AWS, Azure, Google Cloud providers. So before I have we all have majorly heard about Azure, AWS, Google Cloud Platform, maybe a Salesforce as well. So what do you think? What are the different cloud providers, and what do you think are the top three cloud providers that are currently present, based on
That's a
your
very
personal opinion, personal input?
very difficult question to answer, right? So you're asking, we have three kids, and you have to rate the kids in that way. So, so
Yes.
yeah. So see, it every see as I mentioned, right? It completely based on the organization. So if your organization is on a Microsoft stack, tech stack, then I would recommend for them to go with Azure, not coming on to AWS or GCP. And if you are on a open source or a completely on house building solution, then any of the three, based on your your cost benefit, the first thing what you always look at is how you can the scalability and the costing, right? So whichever is giving you the best platform to scale your application. Say, imagine for an application like for a company like Flipkart, they are on cloud. Do we really know which cloud they are using? Anyone?
Mm.
We rarely know, right?
Yeah.
It can
True.
be it can be a service as a they are using as a pass as a service, or they
Mm.
are using some other Google platform itself. We don't know that actually, but 100% sure that they are using a cloud service because they are competing with something like Amazon, which is hosted on cloud.
Yeah.
So it is it comes with a little bit of secret also, because I don't want to disclose which cloud I am using, because that becomes more my organization more vulnerable to the outsiders also,
Yeah.
right? So that is the reason many of the organization doesn't disclose which cloud they are actually using. But
Right.
to answer to your question, I would say it completely depends on each organizations. It is not something which I can say, okay, I when I start my company, I say, okay, I will use this as my cloud. No, I may not be able to do justice to that, because it completely depends on the pipeline what I have, what is my roadmap of application what I'm building, and to which all countries, which all regions I'm catering that to, and what all services which I need. Because I think it was Jatin who really rightly quoted, almost all the cloud services, right? It is all same. It is just the nomenclature different.
True.
Everything is almost same. So it is just that GCP uses a different nomenclature, AWS is a different one, and the Azure is a different one. But end of the day, the services, compute, secure, or it can be database services, the data services, analytics services, all the services are gonna be the same. But if imagine if GCP is giving you a service like BigQuery service, which is based on the number of queries what you're running, and it is
Mhm.
going to charge me 100K per day. And Azure on the same time, it is giving a service maybe for 25K per day, and AWS is giving it for free. Just an example
Mm.
I'm quoting. So
Mm.
I would definitely go for AWS, because
Yeah, true,
as
true.
a start, I don't want to end up paying 100K on the day one. I would say,
Mm.
okay, maybe I have the data density, maybe I have so much of data with me to play around, then yes, I would go for that level, but not from the day
Mm.
one, right? So that completely based on organizations, why, on what basis we have to choose the data on.
True, true, true. That's a really nice thing. And whenever I have been asked this question, similar kind of question by previously by other participants as well. And this is the first example that comes in mind, which I heard in my college time, which was given by one of my seniors, was about giving an example of a biscuit. Mentioned that, okay, what kind of biscuit do you like? I said, okay, it depends. Like if I want to have it with tea, I will have a different biscuit. If I want to have it with just milk, I will have it something. Or just I want to eat it, I will have a different kind of biscuit. I like parley, I like hide and seek, I like good day. So it's the same thing. You have different providers, and different providers provide different kind of service. What service that you want to use that fits very well with what kind of work that you want to do, you choose that provider. So
Exactly.
that's a and that has stuck with me, and I think I'm always hungry, so that this example always comes up and forward with me. So that's a
So
thanks
Jatin,
Nitin,
Wiz,
for
I
providing.
think it
Yeah,
could, yeah, Wiz, it could have been so simple, selecting the biscuits and all that. But the reality when you are into the enterprise and uh, facing the customers, and when there is a demand or customer is asking you, hey, I want to move to cloud, which cloud service we should use? Okay, we can't say like, okay, you go and choose whatever the test and that you like, right? So that's not as simple as that. We
true,
face day
true.
and night such kind of situations. So we go by the fundamental constructs basically. Let's say if it is a enterprise, global customer, and then the scale at which the workload they want to run basically, right? And the region they want to have their presence, their
True,
the user base and everything, that is
true,
one of the
true.
driving factor. Okay, definitely
Great.
this is one of the driving factor, because if you take that way, the
Mm-hmm.
AWS has presence globally almost. It's more than 240 50 countries altogether, so it's almost present in every territory, every country altogether. There are
So
there,
when you say
so that is
present,
where
when you said
AWS.
when you say present, you're talking about data centers. The available, like it is present. They have a physical data center on in this number of
Absolutely.
countries. Oh,
Yeah.
great.
So yeah. So they have the concept of regions and availability zones. So when you talk about the availability zone, they are the independent data centers altogether. Bas- So yeah. So AWS has a lot of presence globally. Basically, obviously, that doesn't mean that Azure and Google undermine to that. Comparatively, AWS has better presence. Secondly, about their credibility. The AWS
Mm.
have been into the business for more than a decade. I think 1.5 decade now. So that is where there is a lot of credibility. User base has already been built on. As Jatin pointed out about the technology stacks, choice, whether they are open source or some sort of a specific technology, the technology choice becomes the another deciding factor. If it's a Microsoft soft, why not to go with Azure basically, right? It would be much easier, seamless integration. It would be much easier to carry their licensing, etc., etc. And the kind of partners that they support, Azure has a lot of partners around the world basically. That is where Azure has a lot of edge over there as well. And that is also one of the reason that there is a customer base day by day increasing for Azure as well. So again, technology choice. If you are a Microsoft shop, you want to carry the licensing. If you want to continue with your current Active Directory and all that, Azure is the way to go about it. You don't have to worry about much from the integration and point of view. Now coming back to Google, Google has its strength and point of their applications, let's say like YouTube, Gmail, all the sort of stuff, they advocate that they use their underlying infrastructure, the network, the cables they have laid out under the sea. There are,
Hmm.
continents they have, connected with the physical cables. So that
Yeah.
is where the agility, the speed, the availability that Google brings in the region where they have such kind of networking connectivity is tremendous. Basically, we use the Google, use the YouTube to see the kind of performance. You run the YouTube application and some other application video, application side by side in your laptop, you will see the buffering that happens in the YouTube is much less than the other, application that you will run. So, this is because of the underlying networking. So Google play on their networking aspects there. That is where they have their, concepts of, global VPC, global network connectivity. Basically, they said,
Yeah.
okay, use anywhere, create your VPC, and deploy your workload. You are good to go around the world. You don't have to choose a specific region. Again, from the localization perspective, from the governance perspective, or maybe regulatory compliance perspective, you may choose your creating your subnets or vnets within your, specific region. But again, Google advocates about the having the global networking altogether because they play on their strength, basically. So these are the fundamental, things that we advocate, and accordingly, negotiate with the customer to choose on the right provider. Now, coming back to, if it is a startup, you don't have to think
Yeah.
globally, right? They
True.
are looking for cost saving point of view. Now the Google gives you the per second billing. Minimum they charge for 1 minute, but again they give you the per second billing. So that is where Google has a lot of advantage over there. Google again gives you, the lot of even big data solution, right? The big query. There are, I think you can free tier as well. Even the enterprise or maybe the startup can use their free tier, monthly for using their, big query platforms free of charge. But again, if you
Hmm. That's
cross certain
nice.
threshold, you will have to
So,
pay for that. But again, see, these are the kind of factors we have to decide when you recommend certain things, right?
Right. Right. Definitely.
so
Definitely. Yeah. Definitely.
Mm.
just to add to what the other two said. Firstly, I just want to say, Vikash, that you said that AWS is in 240 countries. AWS
Mhm.
is so prevalent that there are 195 countries in the world, but still AWS is there in 240 countries. so, so, so that is one
No, no.
thing.
So
And
territories and countries, I was meaning. Yeah, yeah,
okay, okay. No, no, I'm just kidding. So,
yeah.
also, I just wanted to point out for the students, though, if they want to try out any of these cloud platforms, the great thing about all these three cloud platforms is that there are free tier for all three. Azure, I think you can access, correct me if I'm wrong, but Azure, I think you can access for around 45 days.
Yeah. Yeah.
GCP,
30
you
days
can
right now.
access
30 to 60 days.
third, yeah, GCP you can, I think you can access for 78 days, and you have, I think, around 21,000 rupees in your wallet that you can use. You can access, you can create virtual machines, and you can create databases. You can access Postgres, whatever you want to access, you can access. Not all the services, but I think most of the foundational services you can access. And the same is there for AWS. AWS, I think, has a free tier of 30 days. Again, correct me if I'm wrong. So you can. So just for the students' point of view, if you guys want to learn, if you guys really want to get some hands-on, for example, I'll tell you the first thing that I did on the cloud. The first thing that I did on the cloud was I was doing a Udemy course on how to create APIs. So what I did was I created a REST API on AWS. So I used AWS functions, I used AWS API management, and I created an API on AWS. So how that helped me was I firstly got a hands-on on how to create APIs, and secondly I got a hands-on on how to build solutions on AWS. So that's how. So just to reiterate on that. So if you really want to get some hands-on, all these services are completely free to you. Uh, Go ahead and give them a shot. You would not be charged automatically. The companies would take consent from you once your free tier is over, and then they would ask, whether you want to actually upgrade to a paid version or not. So get some hands-on. As I think Sanket also pointed out earlier as well, nothing beats hands-on. We can talk all day about the cloud, we can talk all day about theoretical concepts, but if you don't have hands-on, you have nothing. So get your hands dirty. You will make mistakes, but get your hands dirty.
That's really very important, and I think that has been always stuck with me as well throughout my college journey and until now as well. Focusing more on trying practically whatever concept I want to learn. I learn some basics from the documentation, and then as early as possible, I start playing around with it. But that doesn't mean that I do not complete documentation. I have to complete documentation, or I will be kicked out. Just kidding. Yeah, but definitely, like what Jatin mentioned, whatever technology, whatever we have been talking about for so long right now, big data, DevOps, and different Azure, different cloud service providers, make sure that you play around with it as much as possible. And there, as for students, there are lots and lots of opportunities, lots of free platforms available. You just have to be a student. That's it. That's the only privilege that you need to be. You need to provide a college identity card, information, and I think you get a lot of free services by default from a lot of providers. So explore that. If you have any questions around that, you have every one of us, each one of us already on LinkedIn, right? So I think this event has already been shared. So feel free to reach out to us, any of us later on as well, and we will definitely help out to answer any question for later on as well. Now that answers the question about what are the different cloud service provider and what helps, right? Uh, and I would like to take a personal opinion, like Nitin, Rishabh, Vikash, and Jatin, from you, each one of you, to understand. Like, I know it's difficult to pick up the right child, as Nitin mentioned earlier, right? So, but still, what is your preferred the first preferred cloud service provider based on your own personal experience? Definitely. What do you think, Nathan?
So now I think it is GCP because I'm using it for the last couple of years, and I think I am more familiarized with that now compared to Azure and AWS.
Yeah.
So I'm more like a favorite kid now. So GCP is something which comes to my mind when someone asks me about it.
Yeah.
So and it also as Vikas also mentioned, right? The first thing what you do when you open your laptop to search something, you go for Google. We never go for anything else. So
Yeah.
Google has become like a part and parcel of your life. Without Google, I don't think you can survive a single day, right? So similarly, even GCP, since it is coming from that parent, right? We are like, okay, we can believe what they are offering. It is not that Azure is coming from Microsoft, we cannot believe them, but there are a lot of differences in terms of usability, I would say, in GCP. It's more like a simple platform, like it's very easy to use. And if you can compare, Gmail with the Outlook.com email services, right? It's more complicated. Similarly, on your GCP also, the services what they offer, it's very simple to use. It's not very complicated as we use in Azure or AWS. Very simple terminologies we can actually create a virtual machine, in a seconds in GCP.
Mm.
But for that, doing in Azure, it might take 1 hour to do that. So that's a
Yeah.
difference between that. So now I am more aligned towards GCP, but
Good.
you know it is always, it can change maybe to AWS. When I start using AWS for my next assignment, maybe for 3 months or something, then I'll say I'm aligned to AWS. So it's always like that.
Uh, that's really nice and good to hear as well. Like how the interest keeps changing based on what kind of work we get into. So thanks
See, the
Nathan for that.
so
Yeah.
Sanket, there is a good part to it as well. I mean, as Nitin pointed out, today, if you survey the salary of the cloud architect or the cloud developers, GCP architects earn higher salary than the others. Okay, so that's the one part. Just lighter side of it. Um, Again, if you are interested, you are among the folks who are going to be paid highly. Okay. So second part is obviously something around the way these technology or the service provider are scaling up or picking up. The growth of GCP has been very tremendous. It's more than 80% annual altogether. double to AWS, double to Azure almost, and triple to AWS altogether. So that's the growth rate GCP has. Having said that, they also play around, on their strength, as we talked about. So GCP has is from the adaptability point of view and future point of view. And one aspects I found, like, they are GCP is very developer friendly platform. Very
Right.
very developer friendly platform. You will love to have your work environment into the GCP platform, right? If you're a developer, the way they integrate with the open source, the way it provides the containerization and Kubernetes, they are the pioneer to containerizations, right?
Mm.
The level of control, the command that they provide in the GCP platform, it's tremendous. It's
Mm.
way beyond that the other platform gives, basically. So that's another aspects of looking at it as well.
That's nice. That's a really good input, and I already see that there's for GCP it's already 2 points already been given to GCP. So that's really nice
But
to hear.
having
And
said
how
that, I go by customer's choice. Okay,
yeah,
nothing is favorite for me. I don't do the coding and all. So it's I go by the customer's choice, basically. Whoever they
yeah,
like,
true.
whoever I'm able to convince for my points, I go with that.
That completely makes sense, yeah, and completely relatable. So thanks a lot, Vikash, for that. Now going ahead with Rishabh. So Rishabh, you have your own product, you have your own services, right? So what is your choice of cloud service provider?
Uh, it's very difficult choice to make, honestly. I mean, and it will not be right to say, like, though I am a Google developer expert for Google Cloud, specifically GCP, and we use GCP internally. But there, I mean, and we also provide cloud as I said. GCP is good to start. I mean, I would say for startup, GCP is good. But if you go for enterprise, they still do not prefer GCP over AWS or Azure. Even for example, Oracle Cloud is big in a large enterprise space. IBM Cloud is big in a large enterprise space, because we have worked with IBM Cloud in one of the for one of the clients. So GCP, see Google. I mean, just out of the context, Google has this charisma of making things look very cool, and their products are very. They are very. I mean, they're mastering making product. Like they make it easy for the common people. Like AWS, when you see it sounds very technical. When you listen to Google Cloud, okay, it should be easy. That kind of. Marketing gimmicks, they are very expert in that, and of course it has its own benefits. For example, the AI tools and the big data tools that GCP offers, which are outstanding compared to any other platform, because that's where Google had led. AWS came very early, around 12 years back. Google was led last entrant into this cloud space, so they had to had some differentiator, and AI was something that they knew it will be, and that big data and data analytics will grow. So they build a lot of tools around those spaces. So if you are using those kind of applications or tools, I would prefer GCP. But overall, if you see, like, as a student, you will be doing jobs, you will be going into the market, of course, and because rightly mentioned, GCP engineers are paid high because there are very less GCP engineers available in the market, and AWS being a very comparatively very old platform, it has, like, it has become very common. So there are enough people who work on it, and you get easy. The resources are very easy. Like, for example, as a startup, if I have to hire a DevOps person for AWS, I can easily hire. But if I have to get someone who is expert in GCP, it's really really tough. And that is
True.
also one of the drawback for the GCP, because a lot of enterprises are not moving towards GCP because of the lack of the skilled resources. So of course, that demand is there. There are a lot of certifications that student can go for. But at the same time, if you say the entire cloud markets share, AWS leads it with more than 60-70%. And, like, if you combine AWS and Azure, that kind of leads more than 80-85% of the market share, and the rest all are like in 15-20%. So that also is a very big difference when it comes to the adaptability of this entire cloud platforms. But yes, I mean, that doesn't mean GCP is not good and AWS is much better. But
Yeah.
I would rather say, like, in cloud also, specifically what area you are getting into, like, it's what expertise you are looking for, and you probably choose those platforms accordingly. So as a beginner, GCP is much easy to learn, much easy to use. As Nitin also mentioned, it's like in a clicks you can set up your VMs, and in few seconds you can use App Engine and set up your website in like 10 seconds and sort of things. But at the same time, when it goes beyond that, when it's a real application kind of a scenario, when you're working on a large scale application, you need to kind of look at a lot of factors when it comes to cost. GCP has a lot of free tiers, but the moment you cross the free tiers, the price is like not that much if it is a small use. But if the use is very exponential, you will actually end up paying more to GCP than AWS or IBM Cloud, for example. And we had done this comparison, similar comparison for one of our clients, because they wanted to evaluate all the cloud platforms. So they said like give us a chart, like what if we use IBM Cloud, what if we use Oracle, what if we use AWS, and so on. And
Right.
and of course, every platform has its own advantage, but at the end of the day, you have to see what the application is about, what client is looking for, and and rather client also most of them not aware, but you should understand that okay, this is something which is coming up, and how do we use that kind of insights right now and choose a platform, because it's very difficult to migrate platform later on. Like if you go to cloud and then eventually if you say now okay, now I want to go to AWS, and then you say okay, I want to go to Azure, that becomes a little challenging. So it's better to decide, not looking at the immediate benefits, maybe it's like just because it's easy or it's free, but look at the long term perspective and then probably
True.
decide a good platform.
Very well said. Yeah, the last point that you highlighted is very important point as well. Like we don't have to just focus on the very short time benefit of like how much the service will cost in the free tier point of view, or how well we will we survive if we just go with free tier, and how long the free tier is offering. Maybe it is beneficial till certain aspect, but from a long time point of view, and considering the migration from one cloud to a different cloud, it is very important to consider on from which cloud service provider is beneficial for your product or services from a long-term point of view as well. So that's a really good input, Rishabh, there. Thanks for that. Now,
Also,
Jatin, yeah, please go ahead.
just one thing I wanted to add, like Nathan mentioned about the Flipkart thing. So Flipkart has its own platform called FCP, Flipkart Cloud Platform. It's
Mm-hmm.
their own in-house cloud they've built, and they have started offering some of the service like PaaS platform as a service of their own cloud infrastructure, like like how AWS started, like 13,
Right.
14 years back. So they have
Yeah.
something for the e-commerce players. So if you are an e-commerce player and you are own, you can use their platform and service where they have a lot of tools which are related to e-commerce. Like they give you the smart pricing and then a lot of stuff around that. So probably in future you would have Flipkart as one of the cloud platform as well. I mean, it's not something
No,
that
yeah. So Rushabh, yes, I know. I was aware of that. I didn't want to disclose that. I was keeping
Yeah,
that as
it's not
sensitive
publicly available,
information.
so I'll mention that. Yeah, because I worked on one of the thing. They were using Azure earlier, Microsoft Azure, and there's some service which they use on Azure. But yeah, they have started building something of their own. So yeah.
Thanks a lot, Rishabh. And I think that's really good input that I'm hearing about different opinions on different cloud service provider from each one of you. Now, coming to Jatin. Jatin, what do you think based on your experience? What is the cloud service provider that you prefer?
Summed it up pretty well. That there is no real preference as such. I think it depends on the use case. So I won't repeat the same points. For me personally, since my client asked me to implement GCP, I implemented GCP. But I think all are equal in terms of the kind of services they offer. Again, when we talk about say the regions, I think Azure is in the maximum number of countries. When we talk about the experience in the cloud, then AWS is the leader. When we talk about the growth rate, GCP has the highest growth rate. So of course these things vary a bit depending on the cloud platform, but essentially I think all three are uh, pretty good. I also want, a part of me wants to say IBM Cloud since I'm working at IBM, uh, but I would be lying to myself if I say IBM Cloud. So yeah. So all
Thanks.
three are good. Yeah.
Thanks a lot, Jatin. I think we can
Just to
conclude with
add,
the same part.
IBM
Yeah,
is actually sorry.
yeah.
Just to add, IBM is actually cheaper than all the three platforms. We just did a
I
comparison.
I know. I know IBM Cloud is pretty cheap, I know, but there are certain other issues with IBM Cloud. I think
Yes,
since you've done
of
your
course.
research,
Yes,
you
yes.
know. So
Yeah,
so I don't want to highlight.
absolutely. No, no, I'm just saying that some USP that IBM is the cheaper cost.
Pretty cheap, pretty cheap. I know, I know. We have pitched it to our clients many times.
Yeah.
So,
That's
yeah.
really good insight. I didn't know that IBM offers a very cheap amount of service. So that's really good to know. So now, based on what we have been discussing, I think we can conclude that there's definitely there's no single cloud service provider that we all can say in an unanimous decision that okay, this is the cloud service provider perfect for everything. No, so I think it based on what you want to do and how you want to implement it, and what services do you want to use it, and lots and lots of factor that are present. But definitely, it can be chosen from any of the Azure, AWS, Google, or maybe even Salesforce, right? So it depends on what you want to do. So I think with that, we will conclude this part of our session, and I think Sakshi will take this ahead to proceed with the questions and answers here. Okay, great. I think we can hear you, Sakshi, now.
Yes, sir. That was a very insightful discussion, and it was really great to hear each panelist's perspective on the topics covered. Now we have come to our question and answer session. If the audience have any questions, please put it in the live chat box. Sanket sir, would you like to take it from here?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Thank you so much, Sakshi. So I think we have already a few questions coming up, and it was very interesting to see people responding to different perspective. I want to understand how things are happening. So first question that we have from is from Ajay, Ajay Barla, and the question is about what's the next plan after cloud computing? What's your take on that? So what is the next thing that's coming? I think I'll perceive this question as what is the next thing that's coming up after cloud computing? Or what is happening there? So anyone of you want to take this ahead? This question, like, what do you think is the next interesting thing coming up? I
I
have
would
some
say
input. Yeah,
I would say
yeah, you go ahead, please. Yeah.
blockchain. Yeah, so the blockchain, right? So that is something which is happening a lot. So not widely now, I would say, but it has got a huge potential in blockchains.
Right.
So I would say after cloud computing, because I remember when we started with cloud computing, it was like what we have blockchain now. People never used to talk much about cloud. Oh, he's talking about cloud. That's very good. That's how the feel we used to get. But now, if you look at the blockchain, it's not just about the cryptocurrencies or anything, right? The blockchain is what we are talking about. Blockchain is huge. It can has its own value to it. So I would, according to me, I think blockchain and everyone talks about AI, so I don't want to talk about AI now. So I would say, as a technology friend, after cloud computing, maybe the next would be blockchain, and that's how I feel about it.
That's nice. Yeah. I think I also have one more interesting take on this particular part is that what's the next thing after cloud computing? I think everything that comes next to this will be in one way or another way related to cloud. So even like what we have blockchain, it's a very interesting technology that's coming in already is there, and a lot of development already been happening to make it uh, distributed system there. So and that's also on cloud. So definitely there, I cannot imagine anything which is not cloud and still spread out in such a large extent. So that is something, unless there's some alien technology that comes into picture. But yes, definitely, I think cloud will always be there and will always stay. We do not know what might come up in nature, but any other technology that might develop, like with what Nathan mentioned about blockchain, AR, augmented reality, that's already been coming up. A lot of different technology stack already coming up, and all this will cloud computing will play a core layer on that one. It will be a base for these kind of technologies to and help it to spread it out. So I think that is what I will also answer on that part.
So, I mean, for the interest of audience, keeping that we are this mostly the students, and so ideally, see, learning about the new technology is definitely it's great and what is coming up. But if you look at the near term point of view and the job prospects, kind of things, uh, I think 20 until 2010 it was big data that was has been the considerably changed. 2020 until that it has been the cloud computing and the related technologies. And now what I see, like, because of all these things, everything is in the internet, right? Everything is software driven with the cloud and everything. So soft security is going to be the one of the important pillar. So if you want to build career around that, security aspects, so tremendous career opportunity are there, especially obviously you will have new technology, new trends coming up, but again these are going to be the pioneer or pillar for the career perspective point of view.
That's a good point. Really good point there. And I think based on the current question, I think all of the questions are somehow related to each other. Like one of the next question that is coming from Karthik Iyer. So Karthik is asking about what may be the good certifications available, or good that has that holds good weightage for DevOps, cloud, etc., and has some recognition as well. So before anyone else answer this part, I just want to add one a very important part here, which I believe, that's a completely my personal take, that certification is good, but don't just focus on certification just for the namesake of earning a certificate, because it's just like just doing a degree just for the namesake of getting a degree. Don't do that, never. Focus it on more from a point of view, right? What do you want to learn? Do you want to learn about DevOps? Then learn basic thing. Focus on the basic part. Start with basic thing, then focus on earning a certificate. Certificate is just a, it is more of a giving a path that, okay, learn this part, this part, this part, this part, and that will cover your complete module, kind of a chapter, right? You have a book and you have some chapters in there, right? So something like that. So oh, I think a lot, because we have a lot of questions coming in around certificate as well. And the for anyone who's asking about, oh, certificates, any technology, any field, focus more on practical implementation, and with that you will definitely be easily able to clear any kind of certificate that you are interested in. So with that, does anyone wants to answer on what is the good certification platform, or certificates available for DevOps or cloud already?
So for cloud, I think for all three of the major cloud platforms, you have certifications. There are certifications for being a solutions architect, for being a DevOps professional, for I think for being an AI engineer or an ML engineer, and you also have the fundamental certifications. These certifications are pretty expensive. They are very expensive. They're like $100, $200. So again, I think Sanket, I completely agree with you that I would say for a student to afford these certifications, I don't know how many of you can, or whether your college can sponsor these kind of certifications or not. But there are enough free courses online and free tutorials online where you can actually get that as much knowledge as you get for studying in a certification, that you can get just by watching any number of tutorials and actually implementing all of those on any of the cloud platforms. um, so yeah, so I would say refrain from doing, and actually my advice is a bit counterintuitive. I would say refrain from doing a certification because it's too expensive. If you can afford, go ahead. But I think you can cover the same thing by doing some hands on yourself.
True.
Yeah.
Completely agree.
And if you look at, see, this is on the cloud platforms, right? So, and Vikas has mentioned about the security of cloud and how it is also booming. So, there are a couple of certifications done by CompTIA called Cloud Plus, and and if you really want to advance your career on that, there are a lot of other certifications as well on specific to cloud security aspects. So, to start with, CompTIA's Cloud Plus would be a great platform for students because they can understand the basic concepts of the cloud, and it's not just like any specific to any cloud platform. It will give you an overview of all the platform, and then Then it will talk about the other aspects of it, how we can protect the data. So that is something which I would say, other than the cloud specific platform certifications, what we have.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Really, it's a very nice input on we because we have earned we all have earned some certificate at certain point of time, and we know what value it holds at what point of time. So definitely always learning is the first priority than earning the certificate. So that I think we all agree to that part as well. So I think we only have next 5 minutes left. So before we have the 5 minutes left, we will try to wrap up, maybe try to answer questions in as quickly as possible, so that we will try to cover as many questions as possible. So next question is from Shreyas Jadhav, who talks about how can we protect access to GUIs and APIs. So I
The first and foremost rule, least privilege,
true.
right? Implement the principle of least privilege. That is the first thing what anyone has to do whenever you are developing any GUI or API. Then encrypt traffic using TLS. That is the second thing which you have to make sure. Then what comes to my mind is do not expose any data more than necessary. So these are three things which comes to my mind. Please share others also, other opinions as well, please.
That's really nice input actually. Least privilege is the only first thing that always comes up, because recently I've also been designing some of the most tight infrastructure based on some secure information, and first thing that we design was having how can we provide access only to the people who require. So finding out how what are the roles and what are the least access required. So I think that is one thing that that will be considered, understanding who needs access and for what purpose. Yeah. I think with that, we only have one last question now. I think we already have a lot of different questions coming in, but due to time constraint, what we will do, we will answer this last question, and for rest of the questions that are coming in, I think we all will have our LinkedIn IDs, and maybe I'm not sure if Twitter ID is already there, and you can drop us an email, or you can reach out to us LinkedIn or Twitter, and we'll definitely try to answer as many questions as possible later on as well. With this, we'll take a last question, which is from Dhruv, that talks about how is Hadoop related to big data. So, Jatin or Rushabh or Nitin, do you want to take it? Anyone?
So, I mean, let me answer that. So, Hadoop has come up as an open source platform for the big data, usually for analyzing and batch processing, kind of platform, which creates a kind of cluster of servers and worker nodes, basically to help you uh, analyze and and store the data basically. And that is where now these platforms, especially required by the enterprise, especially for the big data analysis point of view. And usually these happen to be very costly in terms of the amount of compute, the amount of memory, and kind of required for such kind of workloads. Basically, with the cloud, these environment, these servers can be spun up very easily. So that is where even the Azure or maybe the AWS or maybe the GCP all provides such kind of uh, service as in kind of PaaS-based model basically. So you can use the Hadoop services from these cloud service providers.
Thanks. I think yeah, that's a really good answer as well, and how we are working related to big data as well, and how Hadoop uh, plays a role there, and how we can how do we relate it actually when we talk about big data. So now, based on this, I think we are now very close at almost actually over time to our session. So that ends our session, and I will like Sakshi, please take this ahead and take the end of the notes.
Thank you, sir. I hope some of your questions have been answered at least. And like Sanket sir said, for the other questions which are remaining to be answered, you can always contact them on and they'll be always available to answer you. And it is an honor to be learning to take knowledge from panelists like you guys. Thank you so much. On this high note, I would like to wrap up the panel discussion by thanking our esteemed guests for being a part of this Grand Epsilon 2021. We are very grateful to each panelist for making time for us to address and enlighten the participants through this interesting panel discussion on cloud computing. I would also like to thank all the participants for their awareness and their interest in this domain.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you,
everyone.
Thank
Sakshi.
you,
Thank
everyone.
you, everyone.
Everyone, see
Have a
you.
great day and
Have a
have a
great day.
great career ahead. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye, guys. Thank you.
Bye. Guys.
Bye.
Now it's time for today's activity. A link for a Google form will be shared with all of you in the chat box. This link contains a small questionnaire that you must fill to complete today's agenda for gaining your points. This quiz will earn you badges, and at the end of the event, you will land yourself in one of the best performers. You also stand a chance to win some exciting goodies. So go and check out the link, guys. Srinivas says thank you so much, everyone. So during this countdown, I was going through the comments, and it feels really very nice to see so much of love. I would like to personally thank each one of you for so much of love, for so much of comments. Thank you. And moving on, I hope everyone has filled the form. And there is a good news for all of you. We have extended the project times, the project deadline to 5 o'clock today. So you are an inch closer to grabbing your exciting goodies batches. So come up with really nice projects, and we are really very excited to see the type of projects you are going to make. So all the best with your projects. And the deadline is 5 o'clock today, so don't forget that. Also, on this note, I would like to thank each one of you again for joining this panel discussion. See you at 3:30 today for the incredible panel discussion on quantum computing under the MTTS track. Don't forget to sign in again at 3:30 today. The topic will be quantum computing under the MTTS track. So that's it. Bye bye. See ya. This is Sakshi Shetty signing off.